Hello everyone, and welcome to a new chess video. In this video, we're going to look at a super aggressive trap that will give you some very good results in your games because most of your opponents are going to fall for it. This trap occurs when we play d4 and they respond with d5. As you can see, these two moves are very popular. Therefore, we'll be able to use this trap on many occasions. So how does this trap start, chess teacher? Well, on the second move, we give away the most important pawn we have in our position. Chess teacher, you've gone crazy. As I always say, yes, I've gone crazy, but this works. So, what happens here if we give away the most important pawn of our game in chess? What happens if they capture it? Well, here, we're going to make a series of moves to leave your opponent with absolutely no possibilities at all. Previously, the possibility of playing f3 was studied here. But it wasn't very feasible, since they're not obligated to capture. They could counterattack with e5, and it doesn't seem like the best option. So new lines have been developed with better options, and that's why I'm making this totally awesome video. So what are we going to do here first? We'll develop our knight to c3, directly attacking this pawn. And if they want to maintain this pawn advantage, they'll have to defend it. It's important, above all, not to just memorize the moves, I always say this, but to understand why we're making each move. That's why these videos are so great, because we can learn so much from each one. The most common move here is for them to defend it with knight to f6, since they won't want to lose this pawn. And besides, they can defend it with a completely normal developing move. And now it's our turn, and now it's time to play f3. Now it works. f3. The most common response is for them to capture, and I'll explain why. If they don't capture, we're going to capture this pawn ourselves, and we'll be in a much better position with a pawn center, and we'll have also recovered the pawn we were down. So here they have to capture, and they're left with an extra pawn, expecting us to recapture with the knight and continue development with an extra pawn for them. But what happens is, we are going to recapture this pawn with the queen. Now we're already creating some threats that are a bit subtle, but our opponent has to be very careful, because we already have a queen starting to attack. Let's evaluate the situation for a moment. This pawn is now completely up for grabs. They can capture it, and in fact, I'll tell you something else, they must capture it. Because if they don't capture it, we're simply left a pawn down, we'll defend it with bishop to e3, and our position will be much better because we'll have the center. If they manage to capture this pawn, which is in fact what they have to do, black has a 2-pawn advantage, and it seems they more than justify their position. It's true that we have open diagonals for our bishops, but our opponent has 2 extra pawns. Here it seems we're in a much worse position, but nothing could be further from the truth. Here they're falling right into our trap. We're going to play none other than bishop to e3, as we mentioned before, attacking this queen, which has to retreat. Since this queen is in the center of the board, we can choose, you know that gambits sacrifice pawns to gain initiative and attack. And in fact, here we've given away 2 pawns and we're gaining a ton of initiative by attacking the queen, which has to retreat. And we're going to see where it can retreat to. A very logical and dangerous idea for black here is to place the queen on b4. Why? Because it's attacking this point, which doesn't seem easy to defend. And besides, it can always retreat again. So here and in the future, when this bishop isn't here, it seems like a very safe square. So let's first evaluate this option, queen to b4, and how we get out of it. The very first thing you need to know is we're going to castle, which seems like a huge blunder, and now I'll explain why. I'm sure many of you can already see why it seems like a huge blunder. Yes, it defends this pawn here, but they have a very good move that we'll see now from black's side. First, let's quickly evaluate the position. Our king is safe, whereas the black king still needs a few moves to be able to castle. Now we can develop both of our bishops, while our opponent can only develop one, and their queen is very exposed. But here, as you can see, the black pieces have the move, I don't know if you found it, bishop to g4, which looks super strong. It attacks our queen and it attacks our rook. A totally spectacular pin that it seems we can't get out of. But we have a totally unexpected move here, which is knight to b5, giving away the queen. Here our opponent will think we've gone crazy, because we're giving away the queen. But nothing could be further from the truth. If they capture our queen, thanks to the castling rook, we would jump with the knight to c7 and deliver a spectacular checkmate, because the rook would cut off the king. Therefore, this queen cannot be captured. They have to try to create a path. an escape route for this king. Here, the most common move is e5, to give it an escape route upwards. It doesn't seem like the best move, but well, let's analyze how we finish. If they play a5, since it's the most used move in this situation. There's a totally impressive move, and I challenge you to pause the video to see if you can find it, because it's very difficult to spot. I'll give you a hint. The first part is to check with the knight. And since this file is cut off, the king has no choice but to move here. How can we continue? This is the star move. Let's see if you can find it. Pause the video for a moment. Alright, now I'm going to tell you what the totally incredible move was. Queen takes pawn, sacrificing the queen. It's practically impossible to find this move, but if you found it, you're a genius. What's the reason for deflecting this queen? We're deflecting this queen, sacrificing the queen. The reason is to now bring in this bishop to deliver a brutal checkmate. The queen was defending this square from here, but not anymore. We deliver a brutal checkmate since this knight covers these two squares. It would be a totally spectacular mate. Are you blown away by this aggressive line? Well, we're going to keep looking at variations because it's spectacular. And now comes the best part. First, as you know, we sacrifice the most important pawn in the position. Here, our opponent will already be thinking either we're very bad or we've gone crazy. So let's continue with the line. You know, not f3, but knight to c3. And remember, it's more important to understand the position and why we do each thing so you can apply it in your games than to memorize the moves. Although if you do learn them, you can also literally replicate what we're doing here. Knight to f6, now defending this extra pawn they have, and now we will play f3. They have to trade because otherwise they'll be in a much worse position, and instead of capturing with the knight, we'll capture with the queen to create multiple threats. We've said that this pawn has to be captured, because otherwise they'll be in a much worse position. We continue with bishop to e3, attacking a queen that has to move, and we're going to keep looking at what happens when they come here, because there are more options. You remember, right? When they attack us here, we have to castle, letting them pin our queen with the rook, which seems very scary, but we don't have to worry because this is a mistake and I'm teaching you how to punish it. Let's see. Here we're threatening this knight jump as we said before, and we've seen that e5 was a mistake because we delivered checkmate by sacrificing the queen. But many of you will say, hey chess teacher, you don't have to play a5 to stop this checkmate. I can play knight to a6 and defend this square directly, and you can't do anything to me. Well, yes I can. Here it's important to capture this pawn. We're going to capture the adjacent pawn, attacking the knight, and especially attacking the rook to deliver checkmate. And now here they can play this move, attacking our queen and with an x-ray the knight, so we couldn't capture because they would take our knight and also be attacking our rook. However, here we have a totally masterful move. We have a checkmate in 2 moves. Come on, I invite you to find it. Pause the video and see if you can. And now I'm going to give you the solution. The brutal solution is queen takes rook. We sacrifice the queen to deflect the knight's defense, and when they capture our queen, now we jump with the knight, checkmate, because the rook, as always, thanks to castling long, is defending this entire rank. Therefore, we've just captured here, okay? We've just captured here. We've seen that rook to b8 solves absolutely nothing, since we can sacrifice the queen to deflect the defense and deliver a brutal checkmate. Therefore, we have to look at different solutions for black, and it seems a very good one is to place the queen here, trying to trade queens, therefore gaining an advantage, and also defending this rook here with an x-ray. Before continuing with this spectacular variation, I have to thank you. The channel is doing stronger than ever after the slump YouTube put us through. Thanks to all of you. So if you continue with your usual support, I'll be grateful forever. A like, a comment, subscribing, it all helps. That's how we grow more every day. Thank you all so much. Now then, how should we proceed if they defend with the queen here? It seems complicated. Well, the correct answer is to take the knight with the queen. Why? Because we're eliminating the direct defense and now we are threatening checkmate, so black has to react. They can react in several ways. The most logical is to take the bishop with the queen because they also check us and force us to move. Now, if we block with the rook, it wouldn't be good for us because this rook would practically be removed from here because they could come with the rook, creating extreme pins. Not yet, but it would be dangerous for us, okay? Here we would have to move the king calmly, and it's true that now they could take our rook or many other things. For example, let's see if they take the rook. If they don't take it anyway, careful now. 30 minds in the chat. If they don't take it, No, seriously now, if they don't take that rook, we're winning anyway. But if they do take it, even more so. Because we're going to play the queen here, we're going to give a check. If the king moves, we'll bring in the queen. We can enter here. And if they block, it's exactly the same. We take the rook, check. And this is already totally lost because they have to give up the knight. We're going to take it. This position is completely won. So let's set up the critical position. I'm going to go through it a bit quickly because we've seen this many times. If it wasn't clear, you can look back a bit on the board. f3, e takes f3, queen takes f3, queen takes d4, and now bishop e3, attacking this queen. We return to the critical position where we've been studying what happens if the queen comes here, but what happens if the queen comes here to try and trade queens, which seems to put us in a lot of trouble. So, to see this, we're going to look at a real game between two very strong players, whose names I can't recall right now, honestly. I was looking for them earlier, but I can't remember. And this is very important because we're going to see it in an actual game. Later on, you'll be playing real games against real people, so we need to see how people behave, and it's very important to understand these moves. Once our queen is attacked, we're not interested in a trade, since in a gambit, as you know, we shouldn't be giving away too many pieces. If we trade queens, we lose a lot of our attacking potential. Therefore, we'll simply retreat it to the f2 square and continue the game on black's part. Here, black, as always, look to trade pieces. Since our queen and knight are attacked, we have to trade. So the trade happened, and now they're attacking this spot. Here, white castled. So we're following a pretty similar plan. Here, black played a 6, a bit passive, to try and avoid this check here, which seems like a good move. And here, white played knight f3. Why did they play knight f3? Well, knight f3 has a brutal threat right now, because they're threatening to jump with the knight, threatening the queen, and also, with a discovered attack, hit this spot here, taking advantage of the open file. So black played f6 here without a second thought to prevent these very, very dangerous knight jumps. There was a very interesting move here, which was to bring the rook over here, threatening this queen in the center of the board, and we take the opportunity to develop our rook, then the bishop, and then double the rooks. But in the game, bishop e3 was played, also a good move, threatening the queen, which had to retreat, and indeed it retreated to the a4 square. Why? To attack this spot here. Here, white played a move that was too passive, which was a 3, and here they had a move that I'm going to show you that is absolutely spectacular. They had this move here to come with the queen trying to enter through this spot, and the king here, almost completely exposed, could do practically nothing. Therefore, they would have to block this path with the most logical move, e5. And here there is a checkmate in 5 moves that is absolutely spectacular, which is practically impossible to see. If you want, you can pause the video, but it's very difficult to see. And here I'm going to show it to you. We sacrifice the bishop here, pay attention, what a marvel, huh? How we love to enjoy this wooden board, how we love it. I think it's the best investment I've ever made in my life. We come here with the bishop. It's what I'm telling you, eh? On other channels, most of them show this on the computer, and you don't enjoy it as much, in my opinion, as here on a real board, really. Watching these videos with a coffee or something, I actually watch them myself. We come here, I'm getting sidetracked, sacrificing the bishop. When they take, we enter with the queen. Check, the king has to move here. Now we enter with the bishop. Check, the king has to move. And now we finish it off with this absolutely brutal checkmate with the knight, since it can't be taken due to the queen's pin. This isn't what happened in the game, but it could have, and it was wonderful. I wanted to show it to you because it was so beautiful. So, let's go back to the game where e3 was played, and things were set up a bit better and a bit less risky, because they probably hadn't seen this combination. So let's continue with the game, because it really was also wonderful. As I was saying, e3 was played here, and black followed up with the knight over here. Several developing moves were made, such as, first of all, placing the queen here on the same diagonal as the rook. The bishop was developed, and the other rook was placed in the center, also eyeing this spot here. The pieces had been placed in a way that they wanted to launch a brutal attack on the enemy king, who quickly castles to avoid being in the center, which seemed very, very dangerous. How did the game continue? Well, white retreated the bishop a bit, and so did black, to make way for the d5 pawn and develop their other bishop. So here white has positioned the pieces in a way to be able to shatter this long castle, starting with this move here, giving a brutal check to the king, and now there are 2 ways to continue. Moving the king or playing the move 6 or e6, sorry, two very logical moves, but both end up exactly the same. In the game, e6 was played. So let's see how white continued to shatter this position because it's super beautiful. If you want to pause the video, as always, and this is the last exercise I'm leaving you with, you can try to solve this exercise yourself. Here it goes. White played rook takes pawn, sacrificing the queen and sacrificing the rook. And we're going to see that it's spectacular. First, what happens if they take our queen? If they take our queen, we simply come with the rook to the back rank, double check. They can't take the rook or move the king because it's a double check and the king has nowhere to go. Therefore, if they take our queen, it's checkmate on the next move. Sorry, this piece is here. There we go. Let's also see what happens if they take the rook, which is what happened in the game. Well, they simply took the bishop. Check, this king has to move away. And now we sacrifice the queen for the rook, and when they take our queen, and when they take it, rook takes knight, checkmate. Which gives us a totally brutal lesson that this opening, this very aggressive trap, is very powerful. And if you are attacking players, you really like putting it into practice. So if you want, you can put it into practice. I hope you've loved this video. I had a great time, as always, with you. Then tomorrow, I'll be reading all your comments, as I always do in the daily video. You know that a like gives me a ton of strength to keep uploading daily videos, and so does subscribing if you like this channel. And especially, guys, activate the channel's bell, because that way, every time I upload a new video, YouTube will let you know and send you a notification. So I hope you've loved this wonderful video, that you save it and share it, and we'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.